Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. It helps if I unmic. There's so many things to fiddle with here. I was just telling our sort of listeners, this is all sort of rather new for us, but seems to be working well. I can see you guess. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
So, Alex, introduce everybody.
Well, today we are having a great time here. We're really glad and honored to have Ashley Powers from Discovery Education to talk to us about some things we've seen on the internet lately. Some a glimmer of hope. Restoring faith in humanity kind of news when we see news about kids basically in middle school and high school doing great things with science and technology and education. And in that sense, we saw some very interesting stories about a school kid from Texas who just happened to start working on something to help with influenza and wound up discovering something very promising in the way of treatment for COVID. So, with that in mind, I'd like to welcome Ashley Powers from Discovery Education, who's here to talk to us about the different programs that they're working with to improve science and technology education in children. Welcome, Ashley.
Great to have you with us. And
Hi, good morning.
Alex, Alex and I were talking about this. I mean, I'm so impressed with these young people.
Yes, me too. They're very impressive. They have come up with some fantastic ideas over the course of the years, and Anika is just the latest, and she's really worked very hard on her project, and it's incredibly impressive. Yes, I agree.
I mean, how do you do that? How do you get that much knowledge when you're that young?
No, I've been trying to ask them that over the past few years because I'm very humbled every year when I meet these young scientists and the great work that they do. It's really impressive.
Absolutely. Yeah, we no hope for us, Alex.
Well, we can still learn from them. We can still learn from them.
Absolutely, and thank heavens we've got people like that coming through the chain.
Yes.
And if they can do that while they're like in high school, imagine what they can do when they get to college or even start working on research.
Or when they're 16. I mean,
yeah. So how did this young scientist lab start and the young scientist challenge start? How did it come about, and what have you been able to accomplish all of this time?
Yeah, so the Young Scientist Challenge actually started with our partnership with 3M in 2008. So we just wrapped up our 13-year partnership. And essentially, 3M being, the global powerhouse in innovation and science and STEM, and Discovery Education is also, a global leader in digital resources for students K through 12. We came together with a joint vision of, expanding the young scientists and building that pipeline and cultivating problem solvers and young scientists across the United States. So that was really our goal, and that was what we were trying to achieve together. And so the Young Scientist Challenge came about, and it's been, like I said, going on for 13 years now. And so many great young students have come out of this and great innovations. And like I said, Anika was just the most recent one.
And give us some, I mean, this latest one has said, I mean, because it's very pertinent because of what is happening today. But give us an example of some of the others, if you were actually.
Yeah, so back in 2017, Gitanjali Rao was our winner from that year, and she actually identified a product that helped find lead in water. So she found a filtration system that could be portable. And so that was very timely with what was happening in Flint in Michigan. And so that was just another one. And then a couple of years prior to that, Hannah Herbst had come up with an energy efficient way to use the current within water to clean water for underdeveloped countries that might need it. So a lot of really great and innovations that have come out of this program.
And when people come up with these ideas, actually, how is that then taken? Is this sort of through your association with 3M, which, by the way, 3M invented the second best thing after computers, called the Post-it note. They came with the glue, And
Yes.
if you could see, well, I tell you what, if you can see my sort of, if I look down here, look, these are essential to my job.
Yes.
Post-it notes all over the place. So when you come up with these amazing young people, how does it develop? Is this done in partnership with 3M?
Yeah, absolutely. So the competition actually has many milestone components over the course of its cycle. And so we're just about ready to get into the next year's cycle, for example. So we have a call for entry period where we're soliciting applications, where we're looking and talking to educators and parents and students
Hmm.
and saying, are you in grades 5 through 8? Do you have an idea? It doesn't have to be necessarily a big global idea,
Mm.
but it could be something that can impact your classroom, your community. And just so happens that some of them are global reaching, but tell us about the solution that this issue you're trying to solve for, and then come up with a solution, explain to us the science behind it, and then submit a video explaining that science.
Hmm.
And so that's like step one in the process. We then take those videos and we work with 3M to evaluate them. We work with educators to evaluate them, and then we kind of narrow it down to top 10 finalists. Once we have those top 10, we pair them with a 3M scientist mentor, and they work virtually over the course of the summer to bring their idea into life. So they have to create a physical prototype of some sort that they then take to 3M's campus. And this
Hmm.
year that we didn't get a chance to do that, but they take it to 3M's campus and they present it to a panel of judges. And from there, we, have this rigorous competition that they do over the course of 2 days, and we find a winner during that time. So it's a prolonged process. It kind of takes about a full year to do,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
we work very closely with 3M in identifying each of those finalists and then eventually the winner.
Wonderful, wonderful. I mean, the next thing, of course, is that, once you have a winner, that particular project or particular idea that they came up with, is there support then to develop that onwards? I know they get a cash prize, but is there a sort of, uh, is somebody found to sort of get behind them to help develop that?
Yeah, so we maintain relationships with each of these winners as time goes on, and we are checking in and seeing how things are progressing. And oftentimes that mentorship relationship is sustained, and they
Hmm.
continue that communication and support in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, we're always checking in and seeing how they're moving forward with the progress of their innovation and others that most often they are creating besides the one they submitted.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Have you ever noticed any kind of a pattern? I mean, you've done this for like 13 years now, that tells you, this is an environment that's conducive to this type of research and to this type of encouraging young scientists to go ahead and start using their creativity, their innovation tendencies, and so on. Is there something that you've spotted and you said, you know what, we should try to help this along in other places because this is what these innovations and these young scientists, these conditions are the ones that they thrive in. Have you noticed any kind of a pattern that tells us this is where education should be going?
Yeah, I mean, for this particular competition, we see a lot of topic areas, if you will, that come through in terms of the interest level. So healthcare is a big one. Obviously, this year we saw Anika's project come through in the healthcare form. Sustainability, clean water, things along those lines are, really hot topics that we see come through. We're starting to get more into coding and different software tools that we see that coming through in some of the educational pieces that I think are becoming more timely as we move forward. So we do tend to see those. It ebbs and it flows and it varies as the years progress, but those are the ones that always seem to bubble up to the top the past few years. And I think it's very in alignment with, coding in schools and how, we need to really heavy up on the STEM, and those are definitely shining through, I think, a lot in some of these projects that we've seen, especially recently.
What do you think that parents, teachers, students themselves, and schools, and maybe school districts and educational authorities can do to foster this kind of growth in the STEM fields for as many people as possible?
That's a great question. And I think, the big thing with this competition that we have seen in particular is middle school are formative years where that's when students can either lose interest in science and STEM or they'll continue forward into high school and potentially beyond. So starting young and trying to build that interest young and giving them hands-on challenges and projects to work on. Project-based learning is something that I think is really important and critical because it gets them thinking, you're touching, you're feeling, and you're immersed into it. And I definitely think that is something that we're trying to solve through this partnership with 3M, but it's also something that I think is important to continue, not just in school, after school, at home, wherever you can, to continue that ongoing thinking, creativity, curiosity, and supporting that wherever possible.
How can people find out more about what it takes to participate in these programs? And have you expanded these programs outside of the current geographic area, or is it in the roadmap at any point to go global with this?
Great question. So for this particular program, we are currently US based for the competition. It hasn't expanded quite yet. I know that we've had some interest in that in conversations, but we're not quite there yet in terms of expanding outside of the United States. But for students who are interested in science and STEM and anything that the Young Scientist Challenge in particular has to offer, the Young Scientist Lab does have a lot of no-cost resources to parents. There's great at-home activities that parents can use and leverage with their kids. And then we also have a lot of educational resources that teachers can leverage in the classroom. K through 8 is what the Young Scientist Lab supports in particular. So there's videos, there's paper-based activities. There's a lot of really good content for those that might be outside of the US geographic area, but are interested in science and the Young Scientist Challenge in particular.
Sorry, go on, Alex.
Has there been like a notable increase in like the traffic that you guys get from not only the US, but from around the world now that a lot of people have to stay indoors a lot more often? I mean, I know a lot of people are just watching some, entertainment streaming services. I have to confess I'm one of them, but do you see an increase in the interest in science now that people are, kind of forced to switch to other forms of entertainment different from going outside? And do you see this, and this is kind of a deep question, but as a trend that might make us, at least in the US and globally, hopefully, more science oriented, like maybe back in the 50s and the 60s, where, we were going into space and people were enthusiastic about science and technology?
Yeah, so to answer your first question, when COVID first came out and everyone was, distance learning and things were kind of going in that direction, we did see some interest and pickup in the traffic to the Young Scientist Lab site in particular. I think educators and even parents were looking for digital resources to continue that seamless education experience through that digital learning process. So we did see a pickup in that in particular. And then in terms of your second question, we've seen, and I know 3M does this extensive research every year, where they're looking in what is the reaction to science globally. And their chief science advocate, Jay Shree, is really fantastic. And, she's been speaking a lot about how there's more of a positive and take to science over the last few years, and people are having more trust in it. So I'm very hopeful that given this year and all of the advancements that we've had around the vaccine and the spotlight on science in particular, that people are really moving in that direction.
Hashtag faith in humanity restored.
Yes, exactly.
Well, we hope.
Yeah.
And I mean, have you ever sort of thought of sort of making? I know you sort of it's open, but any idea of sort of specifying a particular area for the contestants to concentrate on, or is it completely open?
So we do have some specific topic areas that we ask their submissions to be around: healthcare, mobility, sustainability. And then there's one that's more of a catch-all for community. So it doesn't necessarily, if it doesn't fit nicely into one of those other topic areas, it can be a little bit more of a catch-all. But they do have to have essentially an alignment to one of the topic areas that are listed on the application.
And that is sort of decided on together with 3M, I would assume, yeah?
Yes, what we do is we work with 3M to identify some of the priorities that the organization might be focusing on that this competition can help support and align to.
Great.
Yeah.
How can people find out more? What websites can they visit? What social media can they follow so they can be more aware of what's been what is going on with all these young scientist programs?
Yeah, so the YoungScientistLab.com is the main hub for the competition itself. We host all of our updates around the application, our winners. We live stream the virtual event, so that archive is there as well. And we are actually opening the application on December 15th of 2020. So that's when the new cycle will begin. And on social media, both Discovery Education, so at Discovery Ed and at 3M are posting about the Young Scientist Challenge and the winners and the applicants. And we always use the hashtag Young Scientist. So you can just certainly join the conversation using that and follow along with all the updates and big news that we have around the competition.
Any recommendations for schools regarding how they can incorporate what you guys are doing into their curriculums, either formally or informally? Do you guys have any kind of a liaison that helps schools who want to integrate more science into what they're doing?
Yeah, so actually myself and my colleagues we work directly with schools that have questions or interests. We're reaching out to them, they're reaching out to us. We have some challenge support materials that are easily integrated into the classroom in bite sizes, so it doesn't have to be a big undertaking. We try to make it as digestible and easy for educators to share and implement as much as possible. We're there to answer questions from students, from teachers, from parents, and help them along through the entry process way and beyond. So we're those frontline people, and we're trying to help support as much as we can. And in addition, we have a lot of resources that we're communicating out to those who are interested. We have, Tip Tuesday emails and how to create a captivating video, how to best, tell your story in a way that communicates effectively and efficiently the science behind your project. So we are, trying to support as much as we can and make this seem like an accessible, competition to enter, and not too intimidating to those, because it really doesn't have to be, like I said, a big grand solution. It can be really anything from your classroom to your school. We just happen to find some really fantastic students that are solving some pretty significant problems. So it's been great and it's been fun.
Sounds like a big upgrade from wheeling in a large TV and a VHS machine with a rundown tape that sticks and sounds all fluttery and whatever. I'm really glad that you guys are being able to do all of this good through education and through science and through fostering the growth and the passion that some of us as kids who had the chance to watch Cosmos with Carl Sagan or other shows like that. The next generation after that had Bill Nye the Science Guy, and there's so much more. And I'm really glad that you guys are doing such great work. So I'm really thankful.
Yeah, and I was just sort of thinking, because I was fortunate. I mean, I remember them taking the first step of the moon, watching that TV broadcast. And when the idea of doing science at school was taking the volcano to show and tell, I mean, that was, that was about it, because we've, come so far. And as I say, I'm absolutely amazed. I mean, this young lady that won, 14 years of age, and she's working on sort of, the molecular structure to get rid of the coronavirus. As I said at the beginning, where on earth do they get all this knowledge from? And tell me just quickly, if you could, how do the mentors fit into this? I was looking at the list of mentors here. I mean, incredibly professional people.
Yeah, so once we identify our top 10 finalists, we pair them with a 3M scientist mentor. Oftentimes it can be based on the expertise level of a mentor and what the project is that the mentee has submitted, but they are really there as a sounding board, and they're helping to guide these finalists to think like a scientist. They're not there to do the work for them or give them, the next steps. It's really there. Are you thinking about this? Have you considered how you're going to approach it from this angle? It's not, like I said, it's not to give them the answers, but really a sounding board, help them think like a scientist through the scientific process, help them understand that failure is part of the scientific process and that you might not get it the first time, and how are you going to approach it differently the second time. So they're really an amazing part of this competition, and something that we hear time and time again from the finalists. That's the primary reason that they enter this competition, is to really get that unique opportunity to work with a 3M scientist. And it's one of the highlights of the entire experience, I think.
And do they also, who are the judges? Are the mentors also part of the judging panel?
No, so we have a judging panel that is comprised of some 3M scientists that are not mentors. They're former mentors. They know how the competition runs. But we have about 3M scientist mentors. We have our lead judge who comes from Discovery Education. She's the Vice President of STEM Initiatives, Dr. Cindy Moss. And then we also are working with various district leaders across the United States. So we have educators who are in the classroom working with students on a regular basis who understand how they can kind of, how they're working in the classroom in a science-based conversation with their students and teachers. So that's what it's comprised of. We have about 7 judges on the panel, half of which are 3M, some of Discovery Education, and then district leaders across the United States from different school districts.
Excellent. Excellent, Ashley.
Yeah.
Now, the program has been going on for 13 years. What's in store for the future? How are you guys making it bigger, better for the next generation of scientists?
Absolutely. We're always looking at, how we have administered the competition previously, where can we improve, how can we make it more accessible to more students, how can we support the entry process and get more interest from students across the country. We have a lot of science fair students that are in that field and in that genre that are really interested in science, but how can we maybe find some students that might be a little afraid of science and it's not necessarily second nature to them. So we're trying to figure out ways to support students and meet them where they are and give them the resources and the guidance that they need to, be interested in science, but also put together some applications and see where they go from there. So that's the next step for us is really looking in and how we can further support all students across the country and help them feel equipped to participate in this type of or competition.
Excellent.
Now, if other countries or other organizations wanted to foster science and technology and learning and education and so on, if they could ask you for advice, like if you could go back and tell yourself many years ago when this was starting, something that could maybe save you some time and get you jump started more quickly, how do you think organizations or governments could benefit from your experience in the sense that what pitfalls could they avoid or what should they focus on?
I would say the accessibility part. I think that, like I said, there's students who are naturally interested in science, but I think there's a good majority that are intimidated by it. So how do we equip them to make them feel like they too can participate in something like this? Because they have ideas, they might just be afraid to express them, they might be afraid of rejection, they might be afraid of failure, whatever that might be. How do we give them the resources that they need and the confidence that they need to participate in something like this and have them understand, like, you are just as smart, you're just as capable, and you can, be there with everyone else. And it's not just anyone, it's not just a special someone that can participate in this, it's anyone can be in science and anyone can participate in a competition like this. So that's the thing that I would say is make it feel relatable, make it feel like anyone can be a part of it and really foster that and support that as much as you can.
That's an interesting point because if I remember from my days in school, failure was usually, frowned upon or chastised sometimes, where science is a process where you try to fail gracefully and often and until you actually stumble onto whatever it is you're looking for. And most of the great discoveries, I mean, for example, Gerry just mentioned Post-it notes. They were a graceful failure. They were looking for an adhesive and they found one that just wasn't that good, but it was good enough for Post-it notes. And I mean, science is littered with, penicillin was discovered because somebody failed to clean a petri dish properly. So yeah, I think that's a great point there, that people should not be afraid to fail and fail often and fail gracefully until they actually reach their conclusion. And just like you said before, even if your experiment works the first time, you should really check a second time, because you could have failed at making it work the way it was supposed to. It could
Mhm.
just have been a fluke. So yeah, I'm really glad that you guys have that focus and that drive and continue to improve over the years. Not only, you know, the contest itself and the program itself, but the lives of not just the students, but everybody else connected with all the amazing discoveries that they are making. And you're really sowing the seeds of a brighter, better future. So you've made my morning, definitely.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank
Really
you.
glad.
It's an
Thank you.
excellent, excellent project. And as I said, you know, at the beginning, I'm just absolutely amazed at where all this knowledge comes from. And, you
I
know,
know.
because, you know, in my days in school, it was 1 2 is 2, 2 2 is 4, you know. It's just so, I mean, education, I mean, we often knock education, but education must have improved dramatically. In not just in the teaching, but also the ambience in schooling. And you know, we've seen this actually here in Panama, one of the schools. And you know, when I look back and I think, gosh, you know, we would never have hugged a teacher. You know, so there's much more encouragement, I think, in
Yeah.
schooling today. Whereas, you know, then children are obviously nurtured and they have access to information. You know, we have access to information that would have been unconceivable not that many years ago. I mean, the World Wide Web was what, the early 90s, if I think, or
Mhm.
late 80s, early 90s. And,
90s.
you know, and I sort of, you know, sometimes my computer's off and I look at it and I think, I turn that on, I can go anywhere in the world and I can find out anything. I mean,
Mhm.
absolutely. And this has obviously helped a big way.
Yeah, I
Great.
remember when I was a kid, I had to spend hours at the library looking up stuff, and now I just hit Wikipedia, blink, and it's 8 hours later. So, yeah, it's really interesting how we can access all of this information really, you know, from pretty much anywhere. It doesn't even have to be a computer. It could be your phone, could be
Mhm.
even your TV and your microwave, and your fridge is connected nowadays.
Yeah.
So it's really a world for these kids to really, you know, have as a playground and have their imagination tickled, so they can, you know, get all of these amazing discoveries made. So I'm really glad that you guys are doing this, and I hope you do it for a very long time. And I hope that other countries and other institutions and so on, you know, take this example and also try to foster all of this learning, both in school, at home, and pretty much anywhere. The universe is your laboratory in
Yeah.
that regard.
And Ashley, thank you so very much for spending some time with us this morning. Very enlightening. And again,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time this morning. Thank you.
And Alex, are you sitting on the deck of the USS Discovery there?
I am, in
I
fact.
thought I recognized it. I was there last week. That's excellent. Well, Alex, as always, thank you very much, and thanks for introducing us to Ashley. And well, we will be back with you next week.
Thank you, and I'll see you next week.